The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back. Loving baseball when we were 12 and innocent. And I say that reluctantly because one of my guests, wasn't all that innocent at age 12. But we'll get into that. The three not the three Unger siblings, you can't call them anything. Wayne is the dad, and Sam and Wyatt are the children. They're both here. They were both 12, and we're going to find out what it was to be 12 and a baseball fan. And the reason I picked the age of 12, intellectualism, if you're going to be a baseball fanatic, you will remember when intellectualism met fandom at its highest. You're a 12-year-old kid, you are a baseball fan. And at 12, you're finally starting to be able to understand what you're watching. You have some history to read about, and so I'm going to start with Wayne, the dad. Wayne, what was it like for you to be 12 and rooting baseball fan? Who took you to your first game?
Nobody. I actually went with a friend of mine. So my father was not into baseball. He was not into sports at all. He was, he came from Poland. And my older brother was not into sports at all. So I went with my friend Glenn Weiss. And it's funny. I can't remember if it was 65, 66, 67. I do remember the game. And it was a Saturday game at Shea. The Braves were playing. It was Old Timers Day, and the Mets surprisingly won. But for the life of me, I'm looking for the box score to try to remember that game, and I have found it before. And I was looking before, and I couldn't find it. I'm like, so maybe my years are mixed up. But I mean, I went back and forth. But yes. So Glenn Weiss and I, and as you know, like you, I grew up in Jackson Heights. So it was, 4 subway stops to Shea Stadium?
Yes, and the 7 line, and it was before they called it the 7 line. I think it was the E train.
No, it was the 7 train.
Oh, okay.
It was definitely the 7 train. Or sometimes they would call it the Flushing line. So, because it ended up in Flushing. But I mean, I remember tickets were $1.30 for general admission. Box seats were $3.50, and the reserve seats were $2.50. We got reserve seats. We sat in the blue section, so the box seat section was yellow. Then you had reserved blue, and then up higher was the green section, but they were the same price. And I
Well, I, for one, remember that there wasn't much greenery in Queens. So what did you think of the expanse of the outfield?
Well, I mean, it depends. It depends where you went in Queens. So
that's true.
But yes,
where we
in
were
general,
in Jackson Heights, we were limited to seeing.
Yes, we didn't play on dirt fields. Okay, unless you played at Elm Jack Little League. So, what did I think? I mean, it wasn't so much the green field. It was just like, it was just like, holy crap. It was like bigger than life. It was this huge stadium. The fields, everything was just perfect. And, and here I am with like thousands of other people, and the Mets sucked. I mean, let's face it, the Mets like just absolutely sucked. And, and I was a Yankees fan, but, at that age, and like I say, I'm pretty sure it was 67 was my first game. I can't remember, but I did go to other games at that, but so at that age, I wasn't traveling to the Bronx back in those days by myself. So, but I was a Yankees fan, and the Yankees were actually just as bad as the Mets that year. So, now Hank Aaron was one of my favorite players. So I got to see him that day. The Mets, I mean, that was, you know what? It's got to be 66 because I'm sure Seaver was not playing that year. So, but going back to age 12 again, like I remember the 67 season, and I remember how offense was down. I mean, I'm not sure. I think there were like just two hitters who hit over 300 that year, or maybe that was a year later. I mean,
I think it was 68. I think Yastrzemski won the batting title, hitting 301 or something like that.
Okay, so Yastrzemski won the Triple Crown then that year in '67, because that's when Boston ended up going to the World Series, and they lost in 7 games. And Jim, Jim. I mean, they had Jim Lonborg, and I think they pitched him on like 2 days rest for Game 7. I guess they had no confidence, but Bob Gibson was at his peak, and but I remember that Yastrzemski dominated offense in the American League. The National League was just loaded. It was loaded.
Hey, let's go to Sam a second, and Sam, give me your first memories of being that age and baseball, what it meant to you.
My memory is not as good as it used to be, but so I was 12 in '94, so it wasn't exactly a great baseball year for me with the strike and everything. I mean, I think I probably started becoming a baseball fan when maybe I was like 3 or 4 years old. I mean, I remember the '86 World Series pretty well, so I know I was watching then. But, I'm a Yankees fan and always been a Yankees fan, and they were pretty terrible and kind of, for my whole life up until then, or never made the playoffs at least. They had a different format back then, so they probably had some teams that would have made the playoffs, in today's, format. But, '94, I mean, we were looking like the team to beat, and then kind of just pulled the rug right out from under us, and it kind of left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. I mean, probably at 12 years old, I probably wasn't as angry or upset as, if I was older, because I was a kid and it didn't matter as much. But it definitely sucked to not be able to see that season finish out.
Yeah, I think memory holds true. I think Matt Williams was going to break the home run record on his way to that.
I think so, yes. He had some monster numbers that year.
Yes. Sam, what do you miss about the game then as to opposed to the game now? What are you missing?
I mean, I think the game is, lost. It's lost a little bit of its like nuance, with such a heavy focus on analytics and things like that. And not to say that I don't like analytics and I don't like numbers, because I certainly do, but I think it's skewed like way to that side more than it used to be. It just, again, I mean, this is how many years ago? I mean, 30 years ago now, basically. And it was just like, it just felt that, players were a little bit tougher back then. They played a little bit harder. It wasn't as much about money. It's like, that's kind of like when it started, and, probably has a lot to do with the strike and everything like that. But, also, and just in general, you can go see a game a hell of a lot easier than today, because prices were a heck of a lot more affordable. So, the access, while everybody has access now, digitally, with their phones and TV and everything like that, but to go see a game, it was actually easier back then.
Right. Conversely to my first question, what's good about the game in your eyes today that makes it all somewhat, I'll say, worthwhile being a baseball fan? There are good things about it, and what impresses you most about today's game?
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely good things about it. I want to be watching if it still isn't good. I'll just say the athletes. I mean, the players. They're probably they're the best that has ever been playing the game. They do some amazing things. It's kind of crazy. That when I was growing up, if you threw over 90, I mean, you were considered a hard thrower. Now, I mean, if you don't hit 95, I mean, that's kind of like not normal, especially if you're a reliever. So it's just a lot of differences, I mean, with the players themselves. And I will say, though, that the fact that there is more access wide, that's a good thing. It's really not hard to find, at least videos and information and stuff like that about baseball versus 30 years ago. So it's certainly easier to track and keep track of and all that. So that's a good thing.
Okay. Good answers. Wyatt, you are the second son and your dad's favorite second son, as a matter of fact. But tell me, I'll start with this. How, from what you heard from your dad over the years and your brother, what are some of the things that you're sorry you don't get to see in baseball?
So when I was 12, that would have been, I turned 12 in 2017, but it was the majority of the 2018 year. So obviously, I missed a lot of eras of baseball. And it's not much of what I've heard from them, but, just stuff I've been able to observe only a little bit in my own time. But just watching the steroid era and all the home run races, and even all races like that, even George Brett trying to go for 400 batting average, same with Tony Gwynn. Just I feel like watching chases like that would have been really exciting as a fan. And now, with the way the game is, with the way the game shifted, you're not really going to have the chance to see that anymore because of all the off days that are being given to players.
Mm-hmm. Good answer. What was your favorite moment in baseball when you first started going to games and knowing about it? What really gave you that wow? Was it a Tony Gwynn? What was it like for you taking to the game? What turned you on?
I guess, when I was in person, that started really when I knew nothing about baseball, my dad and I would just go to Yankee Stadium when we could. We saw a decent amount of day games. And I really didn't know much at all. I had a lot of questions were asked. I'll say that, but it was always a great time, and I think that's really undervalued. It's almost like an old catchphrase. You know, come to the ballpark, you'll have a great time. I think that's undervalued now because, you know, people, since you can find the game everywhere on so many different devices and services, people don't really go to the game as much as they don't have an itch to go to the game as much as they would have. So, I guess just going to the game and taking in the atmosphere, how electric the crowds can get, and just watching a game where you know it matters for everyone.
Right. Now, let me cover something that you're going to appreciate your dad for the rest of your life for. You guys go to minor league baseball at a time when the major leagues are devaluing the minor league experience. And tell me what that's like for you, seeing guys come up and develop.
So the most frequent place that we go to would be Daytona because it is the closest, the only one within an hour to my knowledge. So we've been there, I think, might even be at 10 times by now. And last year especially, just seeing prospects multiple times, you know, maybe after about 3 games, you sort of learn what type of player they are. And there's one player I want to highlight from Daytona. I believe he's in high A at least by now, maybe even double A, from last year, who we saw probably 4 to 5 times, if not more. But the thing about that is that with spaced out, you know, visits to games, we see that he was progressing, and that's Ivan Johnson, who Daytona is the
you were going to say
system,
that,
by the way.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, just to be able to see stuff like that when you can go as much as you can. I mean, the future stars of the game, at least in the minor leagues, farm systems, and like what Sam said, baseball in general, players are as talented as they've been ever, and that goes the same thing with prospects, because obviously there's so much more available to help them. Even if, in my opinion, MLB doesn't do enough, it's still way better than it was, and that's why you're seeing so many more, you know, freak athletes and generational talents coming from both America and international. So yeah, being able to go there and, you know, you see a guy, maybe a top prospect's playing. I mean, we've seen a couple of them at certain games, and, you know, just a few years down the line, I could be watching an MLB game and watch that guy make his debut, and I can make the connection there. So I think that's something positive that I take away from going to these games.
Okay.
We actually, by the way, Ralph, you're a Mets fan. Yeah. We actually caught Francisco Alvarez last year.
Oh, really?
I think a couple of times, yes.
Wow. See, that's very cool. And one of those guys that I'm happy the Mets didn't give up for rent a player. They kept their farm system intact. So let me just ask, Wyatt, what books on baseball did you read or do you read?
Well, let me go over to the bookshelf that's right here. Let's see. We have Moneyball. We have The Last Boy, which is about Mickey Mantle. There's a few Baseball America prospect books here. I haven't gotten to read probably as much as I would like to. I think if I found more baseball books, I would definitely go for them. I know my dad definitely has a bunch of them that I can probably access.
Right. Okay.
But there's actually one book that's not based on a player or a concept like Moneyball. It's called Baseball Under Siege, and I got this one with my mom a few years ago. And it's about the Yankees and Cardinals about the incident from spring training in 1961. And I really think that if you can find it somewhere, it'd be worth a read. It's not even eye-opening about baseball, but just a lot of things in life as well.
Was it about St. Petersburg and the training? They both trained at St. Petersburg, and guys like Kurt Flood, Lou Brock were turned away. Bob Gibson were turned away from the hotels, the traditional hotels, and they had to live what they call across the tracks in rooming houses. Families would take them in. They couldn't dine at the hotels once they had permission, finally had permission to stay there. They couldn't use the swimming pools. Does the book cover that?
Yes, that's and it goes into detail on one homeowner who housed the ball players, Dr. Ralph Wimbish, and pretty much how he felt disgusted, really, which he should have been by the Jim Crow laws that caused. Obviously, he didn't have a problem with housing them, but he was, rightfully unhappy with the fact that they couldn't, they're baseball players. They're a lot of them impactful baseball players, and they had a loss of rights. So,
I'm sorry. I believe Ralph Wimbish's son is a sports writer. I do see him posting on Facebook as well. I'm pretty sure that's his son. I'm sorry, Wyatt. Go ahead.
No, I was really just a sentence away from wrapping that up, so it's fine.
Okay. Let's go around the horn. What's your favorite memory, Wayne? Favorite baseball memory?
It doesn't have to be when I was 12?
No.
Wow. I'll tell you something. It's really, and it probably wasn't when I was younger. Okay. And it sounds crazy, even though I am a Yankees fan. I'd say it's probably a tie between the Mets winning the 1969 World Series and the Yankees coming back and winning the 1996 World Series. It's just off the top of my head. There's probably some other great ones, but those are two that really stick out.
Beautiful. How about you, Sam? Greatest baseball memory?
Game 4 of the 1996 World Series.
Okay.
Basically, yeah. The whole series is great, obviously, but that was the game that turned the tide. So, and that gave the Yankees their first World Series in a long time.
Beautiful, great memory.
Mm-hmm.
Wyatt, you haven't had many.
Yes, I was going to open.
Believe me, I envy that more than anything, because can't bring back youth. But what stands out to you?
Yeah, I was going to say I have a pretty limited selection here, so I'm looking forward to having the choice of memories that my dad has one day. But I would. I don't remember much about the lone Yankees World Series win I was alive for, so I'm going to go with the 2019 Nationals World Series run, because that was the first year where I had started to branch out past Yankees baseball, and before that I probably didn't know more than the Yankees or the top 10 or 15 players in the league, and that was the year where I learned a lot about players. So it really started my quote-unquote cheering for them. It really started in the wild card game. I wanted them to win. They go down early, and then the Nationals make a comeback. They win, and that was obviously just the start of it. They had the huge comeback against the Dodgers, trying played great against St. Louis, and then the Astros were a powerhouse. That could be one of the greatest modern offenses of all time. They've had many teams that can have that that name, but it was special. I even remember watching the last inning from the start to the beginning. I really watched that and even more heavily once the Yankees were eliminated. But it was a nice little heartfelt story there, pretty similar to some of the underdog stories that my dad has seen, but just more recent.
Beautiful. Wayne, tell me about Elston Howard and what motivated you to name your website after him, your podcast after him, and how big a part did he play in your overall baseball, your love overall for baseball, or whatever I said?
Well, one, it's a Facebook group. It's not a website, and basically it's named after the podcast. So I'll tell I know you've heard the story, but for the sake of the audience out there, in 1963, it would have been I'm guessing around May, might have been June, I can't remember. So Sonny Fox, who used to do a show called Wonderama that everybody remembers, and you can find archives of it on YouTube, he did that on Sunday. But on Saturday, he did another show called Just for Fun. And it was sort of like a participant game show for kids. And you can't find it anywhere. Trust me, I've searched. Well, somebody in my class got tickets to the show. I think you would get when you wrote in, they'd give you 10 or 20 tickets. So it was for her birthday party. She brought kids from her class. And honestly, the only reason I got to go was because her sister went, and my sister was best friends with her sister. So I know that's why I got to go. But anyway, I got to go. And they had one of the little games of skill or contest they had was a baseball contest. And basically you had a little pitching machine tossing a wiffle ball to you. And you're hitting it with a plastic bat. And back in the day, players would do all kinds of public appearances. They had regular jobs in the off season. I happen to know from a neighbor of mine who grew up in New Jersey that Elston Howard actually had an insurance agency in not Lodi, I forgot, in Nutley, New Jersey, I believe. So anyway, for the baseball contest, they had Elston Howard was the guest. And he was already having a heck of a year. He was off to a great start. And he comes out, and Sonny Fox is like, hey, Elston, you're having a great year. And, there's even talk of MVP. And I go, he's going to win it. And Sonny Fox turns around to me, and he goes, oh, who do we have here? And, puts the microphone in my face, and he's asking me questions, and I know I made up a story about who I played for and how good I was. I clearly remember embellishing that. But anyway, and I got to shake Elston's hand, and I believe he showed me a batting stance. So there was my Elston Howard moment. And so after Craig Spear and I did our first podcast together, you had said to me, listen, come up with a name for the podcast, and Elston Howard's story. And I told him we have to come up with a name. And then later that day, he sent me a text, and it was like, how about weighted donuts? Because Elston Howard invented the batting donut, the weight. Remember back in the day, players went into the on-deck circle with 2, maybe sometimes 3 bats in their hand. They didn't have the weighted bat. Players didn't start using gloves till, I think, around 67, 68. Ken Hawk Harrelson was an avid golfer, and he was the one that started coming up to the plate wearing golf gloves. So Elston invented the batting weight, which I actually have. I have it sitting in a drawer. I remember looking for it on eBay, and I have the Elston Howard weighted donut in the package. And so that's how it became. But, I mean, Elston Howard was he was one of the Yankees' best players. I'd say from 1960 on, and maybe even earlier, he might have been the Yankees' best player after Mantle and Maris. Offensively, he had some heck of years, and I was always followed him, and then after I met him, I was like, that's my guy,
Yeah.
And 67 was actually the year he got traded to the Red Sox. And even though he didn't hit much, they say he was instrumental in getting them to the pennant. And of course it was a close race. I believe it was I know it was Boston, the Tigers, I forgot who else it was. But it was a tight race. The Cardinals, they kind of won it going away, but the American League, it was tight. I don't think they won it till the last day.
Right.
So,
hey, guys, your passion shows through, and that's the highest compliment I can give a guest on my podcast. Loved having both of you, all 3 of you, as a matter of fact. Wayne, Sam, Wyatt, Unger, thank you all for being here, and let's have a reunion show someday.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you for having us, Ralph.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Sam, I enjoyed meeting you for the first time. I enjoyed reacquainting myself with the number 2 son. And thank you, Wyatt. You are both kids are articulate as you are, and Wayne. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, everybody. It's the Comfortably Zoned Network. The show is Lovin' Baseball When We Were 12. I appreciate you listening. Adios and happy trails.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.